And where do we put that love in action? By serving each other, by loving each other, by doing something for each other. Our love for God, we must experience the joy of loving.
My name is Urmi Basu. I run a small project named New Light in the Kalighat Red Light District of Kolkata. This project started more than 16 years ago with a very, very small amount of money, 10,000 rupees only. But what we had in abundance was our love for the children and the women who lived in the Kalighat Red Light District. My journey here began on aspiration, began with love, began with creating hopes for those who have nothing. I consider myself blessed to have been born in Kolkata, having been raised here, and having lived my entire life so far with an icon of love and hope and affection, forgiveness and kindness like Mother Teresa.
This icon of love was born Agnieszka Gonja Boiesiu in Skopje, Yugoslavia on August 27, 1910. Out of the 5 children born to Nicola and Granafile Boiesiu, only 3 children survived. Gonja was the youngest, with an older sister, Aga, and brother, Lazar. When she was barely 7, her father died suddenly, and her mother had to care for them as a single parent. Teresa's life was centered around the church as a teenager, but she never thought of being a nun. However, at the age of 18, she decided to follow the path that she felt called to. She chose the Loreto Sisters of Dublin, missionaries and educators founded in the 17th century to educate young girls. Gonja had to leave her family to follow her dream. In 1928, the future Mother Teresa began her religious life in Ireland, far from her family and the life she'd known, never seeing her mother again in this life. A year later, in 1929, Gonja was sent to Darjeeling to the novitiate of the Sisters of Loreto. In 1931, she made her first vows there, choosing the name of Teresa. In keeping with the teaching ministry of the congregation and her deepest desires, it was time for the new Sister Teresa to begin her years of service to God's people. She was sent to St. Mary's, a high school for girls in a district of Calcutta. She began by teaching catechism, history, and geography for the next 15 years. It was in this protected environment of the school for the daughters of the wealthy that Teresa's new vocation developed and grew in the secret of her heart, as she would look down in the evenings from her terrace and see the poor around. She knew there was a call within a call. She was to give up Loreto and go there out on the streets. In her own words, she said, "I heard the call to give up all and follow Christ into the slums, to serve Him amongst the poorest of the poor." A lot of formalities did its rounds before she had to be officially released, not from her perpetual vows, but from living within the convent of the Sisters of Loreto. she had to receive permission from the Archbishop of Calcutta to serve the poor openly on the streets. She had to figure out how to live and work. As for clothing, Teresa decided she would set aside the habit she had worn during her years as a Loreto sister and wear the traditional clothing of a Bengali woman. She got herself inculturated to the Indian Bengal context in a plain white cotton sari with blue stripes and sandals. Teresa first went to Patna for a few months to prepare for her future work by taking a nursing course. In 1947, she received permission from Pius XII to leave her community and live as an independent nun. So, back in Calcutta, she rented a small hovel to begin her new undertaking. She began by teaching kids the Bengali alphabet. There were times she had to beg to help others. Teresa found a never-ending stream of human needs in the poor. She was frequently exhausted. Despite her weariness of her days, she never skipped her prayer.
I don't think we would be able to do what we are doing if we didn't have that deep union with Him in the Eucharist, because our love for Jesus is more intimate. Our love for each other, more understanding. Our love for the poor, more compassionate. And I think that's the fruit of the tenderness of God. Jesus' love for us in the Eucharist. He's always with us, everywhere, all times, to be our life, our love, our strength, our joy, our peace.
Mother Teresa often quoted and insisted on family prayer.
And where do we begin to love? At home, in our family. Love begins at home. And how does it begin? By praying together. Parents, teach your children to pray. Brothers and sisters, help each other to pray together. For family that prays together stays together.
Teresa was not alone for long. Within a year, she found more help than she anticipated. Many seem to have been waiting for her example to open their own floodgates of charity and compassion. Young women came to volunteer their services and later became the core of her missionaries of charity. On 7th October 1950, this little band was officially recognized by the Holy See. Many offered food, clothing, the use of buildings, medical supplies, and money. As support and assistance mushroomed, more and more services became possible to a larger number of suffering people. The first home for the dying was called Nirmal Hriday, followed by Nirmal Shishu Bhavan for children, Premdan for young adults, where they were trained in skills, and a home for lepers in Asansol.
As you know, we have a home for sick and dying destitutes in Calcutta. And in these years, we have picked up from the streets of Calcutta over 46,000 people. Over 22,000 have gone to God, home to God. They died most beautifully in peace with God. For that is the greatest development of a human life, to die in peace with God.
Mother Teresa, the beacon of love, had become a source of inspiration to many. Many volunteers joined her to reach out with their hearts.
My name is Alan. I'm coming from France. I start my pilgrimage by foot from Le Mont Saint-Michel in France, and I'm walking to Holy Land. Then after I flew from Holy Land to Calcutta, because according to the Gospel, when you walk, you receive many graces, but this grace you have to give back to God. So I give back to God, to the poor of the poor in Calcutta here, in Calicut. And what I learned is the more you give to people, the more grace you receive, the more grace you give back. It's never end, never end, never end. And like Mothr said, it's not the maximum you do, but just the love you put inside what you do, it's enough.
I want to share about one of our volunteers who have been coming here for the last 10 years. So another young new volunteer girl had come. When she heard from this elderly volunteer that she has been coming for last 10 years, though she decided for the first time when she came that would be her one visit. But then something touched her life, she said, which kept urging her to come back again and again. So this young lady asked her, what was that touched you, that made you to come back again and again? So the answer was, from the time I started coming here, my God became bigger, and others became bigger, and I became smaller.
As Mother Teresa lived from day to day, she began to get even more convinced that it was not the physical and material poverty that mattered, but inner poverty that killed people due to lack of love. And this she lavishly poured on all those who needed it the most through this wonderful service that the missionaries of charity administer, seeing in the person suffering Jesus himself. Until her death in 1997, Mother Teresa continued her work amongst the poorest of the poor, depending on God for all her needs. Honors, too numerous to mention, had come her way throughout the years, as the world stood astounded by her care for those usually deemed of little value. In her own eyes, she was God's pencil, a tiny bit of pencil with which he writes what he likes. Despite years of strenuous physical, emotional, and spiritual work, Mother Teresa seemed unstoppable. Though frail and bent with numerous ailments, she always returned to her work, in spite of her ripe old age, to those who received her compassionate care for more than 50 years. She was Mother.
I was a doctor then, aspiring doctor to be a very famous doctor. But with Mother's love, I realized the real meaning of my existence in this earth. I cannot explain the deep love I got from her and the deep love I still had for her. And I want to give this love to every person whom I meet, because this is so precious for me. I got it from Mother.
I find it a privilege, because many times when I'm dealing with these unfortunate little ones, many of them from a very insecure surrounding, parents do not have enough to feed them, living below the poverty line. I find it such a privilege to be here to serve in this order. Because if I would be at home, I would never have this chance of taking in those who are homeless, feeding the hungry, taking care of those who have nobody, those who are so rejected in society. So I find it that is our service. It is a way really of expressing that love of God, that hope. So many people, they come and they are so downcast. And then when I take some time, I speak with them, I listen to their story. It is like there is some burden falling from their heart, and I see that people after some time, by being in contact with us, they start a little smiling.
Mother Teresa loved people beyond the realms of religion, loved them beyond the realms of looks, loved them beyond the rottenness an ordinary person would see. All that she saw was God in each one of them, and served them with tenderness and affection. Finally, on September 5th, 1997, after finishing her dinner and prayer, as she was battling for life, her master, Jesus, came to take her back home, a reward to a faithful servant, to assure her that much needed rest in his bosom. But she continues to live amidst us, continues to inspire us with beautiful lessons of love. Love till it hurts.